Do that again.
And away we go.
All right, here we are. We are live.
All right.
Interesting week. So many things to talk about, but we're gonna pick on the most obvious, and that was probably the infamous speech given at the end of the Oscars by Frances McDormand.
You mean the show that nobody watched?
The show that nobody watched. That's right.
16% down from what I understood.
You know, and it's funny how they fight to defend those numbers even.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's just,
Oh, really?
They were like, well, that's just because they were like on spring break or some silly bullshit like that. Yeah, I was like, come on. I'll tell you what, you got to give them this. They don't fucking quit.
No.
They stick to the guns. And
whatever the lie is that we have to tell, then, that's what we're going to run with.
The hardest working people in Hollywood now are the spin doctors.
And I'll tell you what, and there's so many of them. They're like a bunch of ants. If you look at a ball of ants on a big old flood going down a stream, that's what they look like to me. Big full-time, but anyway, going to so McDormand made this, she alluded to this mysterious clause that she's now famous for coining, and that's inclusion rider. And it's funny because obviously the top Google search item right now is what is an inclusion rider. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because we all three have looked at it and we've found some information on it, and it really sounds like a lot of smoke and mirrors. It really does, because when you look at entertainment lawyers and you look at contract lawyers, they're all saying, I haven't seen one of these, and I don't know of anybody that has one yet.
It's funny because my whole introduction to this is, when we're brainstorming to figure out what this week's topic is going to be, and I run across this article that's supposed to be sort of social media related, whatever, and I'm looking at it as a possible topic and not realizing that just it relates to a video or a speech that was given at the Oscars, which I again didn't watch. Right. So I had to pull up the video, and so I'm watching this, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Well, for me, I see far-reaching implications with what she's proposing. So it was interesting that I naturally had to call up.
And what kind of like what we're talking about, it's not really a holistic new thing. I mean, you always heard the stories of Johnny Carson would come out and they would do these behind the scene things, where Gary Busey had to have only green M&Ms in the container. That's kind of where the concept started from, and now they've come up with a way, it seems like, or this is an attempt to potentially weaponize this for a political action group or an agenda.
I would say dead on. It's definitely a bully tool, because when you look at contracts, and basically, in a nutshell, they're trying to say that these contracts are going to give women more power, stop discrimination against people of color, help the LGBT community, and help people with disability. Well, you just explained what the EEOC does. Right. These laws are already there, and every contract that's out there follows those guidelines. Right. I mean, that's why everybody's so confused about the introduction of this term. It's amazing.
Confused is a very good word.
Well, it's the only way you can. That's nothing new for Hollywood. They always
that's
come
intentional.
Up with
but that's by design.
Absolutely.
It's not a wheel. We added our different aspects to it.
Circle.
Now it's a wheel.
It's a circle with a hole in the middle of it, right? Well, so we did some looking, and we found out that the two females that are doing this is a girl by the name of Stacy Smith and a Kalapana Kodagal, and they're with the Cohen Milstein firm, and they're basically civil rights lawyers. Okay. And they've penned similar types of writers, I guess you would call it, years ago. Mm-hmm. But nobody, again, can see them. When people have inquired, a lot of the attorneys representing these companies have inquired to see this verbiage. They're not releasing it. Right. They're not sharing it. So they're holding it close to their chest. So you have to ask yourself, why are they doing this? What is the motivation? And I think the point you made earlier was about, weaponizing it. Yeah. Hollywood's notorious for getting a mouthpiece up there.
That and exclusivity. They hold on to it. If they don't show it to you, no other lawyer can go write it or modify it.
And so the argument is they really don't have anything that anybody else can't write. Right. Because if you're asking for green M&Ms or a particular water, or I can't have anybody wearing blue shoes in my room. Right. you can do that anyway. So they're not really introducing anything new. What they're doing is they're basically spinning up the fervor to get people to join in.
Sure.
So what you've automatically got now within the first 48 hours, you got 7 actors jumping in, or 7 figures in Hollywood jumping in. So they're not all actors, because half of them I've never even heard of.
Yeah. Right.
And so they're saying, oh, I'm using exclusivity writers. Well, let's see how that works for them. Because 1, they haven't been introduced to anybody. 2, when you're in a contract negotiation, that's a negotiation.
Right.
So I'm going to introduce what my terms are.
Right.
You're going to counter with what your terms are. And then that's when the negotiation begins. So in the middle somewhere, we're all going to settle on what the final terms are going to be.
But generally, writers like that don't get negotiated.
They don't. They're in or out.
Look, this is.
Yep.
And it's generally hard. It's generally a hard point for them.
Yeah, it's a hard line, typically.
Right.
Unless, of course, it's like something like blue M&Ms or green M&Ms.
Yeah, right.
The simplicity of it is based on that.
There was something I read in there, in one of the articles I read concerning this, was the way it worded it, it almost made it sound like whoever the actor or the person who's negotiating is, once an agreement has been made, that this inclusion rider could be added after the fact, which didn't make any sense to me. As I'm like, okay, the agreement is based on the terms that were agreed on when y'all were together. You don't get to come in the back door and say, oh, by the way, this is my other.
Well, you have to remember, they're going to try to introduce backdoor action in anything they do in Hollywood. If you look at the Weinstein problems and all the things that go on there,
true.
You have to kind of ask yourself, okay, so who is actually going to agree to this? Okay, 1.
Yeah.
And 2, my question is going to be, what are they going to introduce that you're not already seeing?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we already have women, and because we're talking about it, doesn't mean we have anything against or for it. This is just a good discussion. We have women that are in lead roles, women that are in production, okay, women that write, women that are executive producers. So I don't see that a problem.
But how I look at it with what you just described is you have a group of women or a subset of women who are keeping score.
Yeah, they are.
But, so
not only that, you got to get the right women in there. We've learned that through
Sure.
through political action and everything else. It's the women that they're looking to put in there with the right agenda.
And that's exactly where this is going.
That's what it leads to.
It becomes so you have SAG.
Yes.
Now you'll have NAG.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. What would you call it? What would you call it?
But that's a good point. Yeah. Is if you're trying to drive home this agenda,
mm-hmm.
you're going to have to fill it with role models who are going to be able to push forward this
mm-hmm.
agenda, and nobody's and whatever backlash that
mm-hmm.
they do encounter, it'll be negative for the person who's throwing the shade.
But I'll give you the example of how they do it. It's when I used to do government contracts and the armor business, let's say, and I had GSA coming to me to They wanted my armor, basically, is what they would do. They'd say, I want your specific armor. So what they would do is they would go in and write the contract specifically so only I could provide that armor. No other company, because it would have to go out to bid. You'd have to say, okay, this goes out to bid to everybody.
Sure.
But the way my contract is written, I'm the only one that can produce that armor. It has to be made in Houston, Texas. It has to be this. It has to be that. They could add all these inquiries, like these writers,
mm-hmm.
that would allow them only to pick.
So it's
basically, it led the horse to the water to drink. Is what it did.
So when you look at most RFPs or RFQs, however you want to call them, they go out. They're obligated. It's basically a fairness thing.
Right.
So you're going to send it out to all suppliers. You already know there's a percentage of them that are not going to meet that criteria.
Right.
But you're sending it to them anyway because it gives you deniability. Or basically, look, I included you.
Exactly.
You couldn't meet the terms, and so I chose to go with vendor B.
And I think that's why they're doing these riders like we're talking about.
Well, they are. I think they are too. I think they are, but I think the
now it might not be a specific person, but I'm saying they're going for a specific subset. Is what
I think the whole scope of this is much bigger than just that, though.
I believe so.
I don't think it's just Hollywood. I mean, if you look at Hollywood actors and you look at what they do to be financially diverse, you have to kind of wonder, as they're getting up in their years and they're not attractive to the audience anymore.
Right.
You want to control the next group of actors that are coming through. Then you control the flow of the agenda.
That's perfectly making sense to me.
And so that's what they want to do. So you're looking
the way.
So you look at the aged actors that are getting into these very political things, and they're shaping basically the future of cinema. But look at the current state of cinema. Things are not they're better than they've ever been. If you live in this country, things are regardless of what they tell you.
Yeah.
Things are better than what they've ever been. You have people that may live on the street because they choose to, but you've got lower income people that have big screen TVs. They have cable. They have cars. They have iPods.
It's a very comfortable living at the bottom.
Very comfortable living at the bottom.
What's your thoughts on this? So if you're trying to push an agenda, and let's say that you're going to have a certain subset of people that are not going to fall in line with that. Mm-hmm. Well, as your agenda starts gaining traction, it starts sending a message to the people that were your opposition. So either those people are actually going to fall in line, or they're going to fall away.
Well, they're going to. Well, okay. So, prime example would be the Hallmark Channel. So you had this thing for years when the whole agenda started to shift towards diverse lifestyles. You had a group of people that didn't want to watch that. So you had. Is
that the whole Lifetime?
Yeah, you had Lifetime. Oh, well, no, you say that, but you make fun of that. But it's very important.
I always make fun of Lifetime.
No, I hear you. I don't watch them either, but it's very important for that sector. So when those things like the Hallmark Channel and Lifetime Channel. And anything that a church would fund, they had their own TV station for a long time.
Okay, all right.
You even had Glenn Beck's organization with his production company. Well, I know.
Don't even get me started.
But they're producing all these different things for that alt media.
Right.
Basically. So what ends up happening is it does erode. It does erode into the Hollywood segment. Mm-hmm. This is why they're fighting so hard for this, is the fact that they're grasping, in my opinion, at last straws. They're going to make what they can make while they can. And then they're going to spend their time influencing young people to get out there and change the world on their behalf so they can get more money for it.
Well,
we're missing the whole... We talked about a movie the other day, or just a little bit ago, that was made in 2007 called The Bee Movie. And what are bees? Bees live in a huge colony. There's some bees that never see the light of day. Okay? All they do is work.
I get to
your feed
point
the hive.
Right. No matter how irrelevant I kind of hope that Hollywood would become, mm-hmm. they still control, when you're trying to get the masses butts in seats, mm-hmm. they still kind of are the masters when it comes to that. Because they put, but they,
not across the board. They're not.
Okay.
They're a bad investment.
Okay. Right now they are, but I mean they're kind of they're a slowly dying dinosaur. Mm-hmm. But they still make movies that go to theaters that put some butts in seats.
Right. Well, and I think that's due to the masses don't care. They don't. You've got a sleeping mass.
Yeah, but
and they're looking for entertainment.
But you have but you also have a mass out there mm-hmm. that's slowly starting to see the unimportance that Hollywood has.
When you ask them, was I entertained? Yes. Did it change the way you feel politically? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. So when you look at it, you have to look at it in action. Because if you ask somebody, they're not going to come out and they're not going to out themselves because they don't want to be labeled on a YouTube video or on a TV news show.
Yeah, here's what you said, and it's on the internet forever now.
So what they basically do is they vote with their wallet mm-hmm. and they vote with their feet.
Well, perfect example was within at least a month mm-hmm. or so. I know that you, me, and another person mm-hmm. went to a freaking theater to see a movie mm-hmm. that was only showing in a movie theater.
Right.
We didn't wait till freaking came on Netflix or any of that stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, Hollywood met its goal. It took our money, put it in seats that weren't ours, and had us watch a movie that's theirs.
Yeah, it's just not like it used to be, though. So when you look at all these theaters that are popped up all over the place, who owns them?
That's a good question.
Holding groups.
Okay.
Holding groups hold them. Okay, so the way a movie theater works is that the only way they pay their management and their employees is through concession sales.
Yeah, they don't make any money.
They don't make any money off ticket sales.
That's true.
So basically, the ticket counter becomes the outlet for Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So Hollywood's going to dictate how many screens it shows on, how many times a day it shows on. Now, the movie theater will sell you
So kind of like the radio industry used to be with records.
Yes. They sell you the auditorium and say, if you can get 150 seats in here, we will play this movie. Range 15, I keep bringing it up because they were very successful at that. Mm-hmm. The reason why they were successful at that, not necessarily the greatest movie on the planet, but it was very entertaining for a lot of us. They had a following.
Yes.
And they knew how to market to their following.
Even the marketing that they weren't doing was being done by the service members.
There you go. Hey, groundswell marketing is what that is. Hey, groundswell. Brother. It's a groundswell. So you have to look at the dynamic of Hollywood's financial stability. Now, they have to continue to put butts in the seats to make money, okay? They're going to do it through hype marketing, promotion marketing. And if that's all they give you to watch, then that's all you're going to go watch. It's like cable TV. When you buy cable TV...
You buy the whole package.
You buy 200 channels, and of those channels, 125 of them are shit. They're like Bollywood and Bombay basketball.
But you're still paying for it, and they're still making money off it.
And they're still making money off those channels.
CNN is still making money off of you as much as you want to hate them. Yeah. You're still paying CNN's bill when you pay that cable bill.
So you gotta take this a little bit beyond Hollywood. And so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about where this is going, okay, and the potential ramifications, because it's big. So if you think about somebody that takes an inclusion rider and says, I am going to provide my services as an entertainer based on this criteria, what's going to stop that one person from walking into a company and making the same demand as the CEO?
Right.
So the biggest argument right now, let's just pick a sport. Let's just say there's no female basketball coaches in the NBA. Mm-hmm. They're all men.
Right.
Okay? So you hit somebody with a clause, an inclusion clause, and you get enough media behind it. Hey, I applied for the Houston Rockets and they didn't hire me. Hundreds and hundreds of times. It's because I'm a lesbian woman.
Yeah.
Now it's not because you can't dunk.
You get to basically pin your argument back to a contractual agreement,
right,
and publicly shame somebody.
There you go.
Because this is how it appears that.
Exactly.
Not only publicly shame, you got a legal recourse at that point.
Exactly.
Because you have a signed contract that's legally enforceable.
And you have a precedent somewhere in this country.
Right.
So if an actor gets this thing landed and they successfully are able to market this, it's going to start rolling over into all other things. These are people that conquer like that. That's just how they operate.
Yeah.
So what's really funny, so we're talking basically about entertainment and sports. Let's talk about bigger issues. Let's talk about the environment.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's talk about the Governator.
There you go.
Okay, I'll be back. Yes. He's back.
Get to the eco-friendly chopper.
Yeah, he's over at freaking South by Southwest.
Yeah, so he was recently in South by Southwest. I think you listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
It just enlighten us with what this clown said.
Oh, this guy here. I mean, without going into a whole lot of detail. I mean, it was
I like it when you go into details now.
Well, okay, so skipping past all of the. I mean, his ultimate goal is to basically sue all oil companies because they basically don't have.
For committing murder. First of all, let's identify the charge.
They equate oil companies as the same as tobacco companies.
Sure.
He used the word first degree murder.
First degree murder. Yes. Now, you know what case he's using, right? He's talking about when the Nigerians went in there and killed some villagers.
Okay.
That's what he's talking about. He basically pinpoints this case. Now, what people don't understand about how things work overseas with these companies is the fact that I go visit you and I'm talking to you about doing oil. Hey, I'm here to do exploration for oil. Oh, well, we have rich oil fields all over the place. Unfortunately, there's a village there.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's cool. Well, once that's all taken care of, we'll come back and see you. So what does that guy do?
Right.
He gets a warlord to go out and wipe out that village, and then they turn around and they blame the oil company for it. So that's where Arnold's wrong.
Talk about Africa, and you don't include warlord, you're an idiot.
So it's very misleading right out of the bat on his statement based on first-degree murder. He's pinning it. What people forget, they look at the overall oil industry's murdering people. No, he pinned it. He pinned it to that group in Nigeria.
Right. He did, and along with tobacco. He equated it with tobacco, killing millions of people.
So my experience with big tobacco is quite diverse because I work for big, and I also worked in big food. Now, I can tell you that one of the things that happened in big food is once the big tobacco cases were all settled out and they basically got everybody to play the way they want them to, they start going after the food industry with the very same tactics.
Well, lawyers got to work, baby.
Exactly. And the lawyers' kids have to work, and the next generation has to work.
Exactly.
And so they're doing the same tactics there. They're leaving no stone unturned. I mean, they don't miss a thing But, going back to Arnold, that's the same tactics he's playing. He's using the global. He's basically basing his business in the United States. Mm-hmm. And he's using a global presence to do this.
He's using R20. The R20 group is who he's using.
It was funny because, in this podcast that's Politico's podcast, mm-hmm. I think it's like, I'm not even going to say their name.
Yeah.
But anyway, when you sort of unpack what it is that he's talking about, one of the things that he brings up is the way that he wants to drive forward this agenda is, changing laws that exist inside of workers' compensation.
Would you use an inclusion rider to do that?
Well, yes, you would.
Exactly.
Possibly.
But also, you're bubbling to the surface laws inside of workers' comp that used to be just related to this, and now all of a sudden it's become okay. To take Todd's word, you've weaponized it.
Yeah.
This thing that used to be kind of an
innocuous
thing has now suddenly become the most important tool on the table. But one of the statements that he made I thought was most profound is when he said, "I'm going to maximize using of the bully pulpit." Okay,
I can't believe you said that.
Yeah.
There is no veiled
threat,
message or anything.
Yeah.
That's what he said. I'm going to twist your arm and I'm going to guilt you into doing whatever it is that we want to get done.
It's funny. He peppered that entire interview with phrases from Predator.
Right.
I was like, oh my God.
That's so you draw a relation to the character Dutch from the movie.
Yeah.
He wants you to believe it's still me, Dutch,
and
telling you what to do.
Ultimately, this interview that he does on this podcast is self-serving because at the end, he suddenly promotes all the upcoming projects that he's going to be in, which I'm not even going to name either because it's...
When doesn't Schwarzenegger do that? People forget that he's in a huge shit fight with Trump right now.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're in a shit fight. I personally think they're great personal friends, and they're just fronting this. Because if you look at the references off of his articles, it all links to Trump.
And it comes back from a guy who's a professed misogynist anyway.
Exactly. And he also, he went as far as to say, I think Trump secretly loves me.
Really?
Secretly loves me. If you remember,
Schwarzenegger, he secretly loves me.
When he took over Celebrity Apprentice, it was like a fart in Sunday school.
Matter of fact, he did bring that up in the interview.
Of course.
The way he worded it, it was actually like he was upset of how that turned out for him.
Yeah.
Now, he did kind of allude to, and I thought this was kind of comical because I was wondering if Hollywood at some point would run with this idea. As he said that one of his upcoming projects, whatever it is, would actually be him returning from the past, returning from the future into the past,
Terminator,
to actually break Donald Trump out of jail,
right?
Because he'd been supposedly impeached and put in prison.
This is so how far out that clown is. I mean, how you take this guy seriously? The steroids have definitely...
I was going to say, the roid swole his brain.
Went to his brains, man.
Yeah.
He sounds like he's letting Vince McMahon from the WWE write this shit for him. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I personally think he's setting himself up for running the presidency in 2020.
Bingo!
But how can he do it? Again, you're going to have to pass some legislation that allows you to...
Yeah, but if you're working on the global community...
Yeah.
Vienna...
By law, he can't do it.
Oh, yeah, but
how is he governor of the California state then?
But we're
that's California.
We're talking about lowering the ages of the voting age.
That's true.
If you can change that...
Yeah.
This whole
you have to be born here clause. That's outdated.
Hey, if the guy who comes from another country has a better idea than the guy that was born here,
and I'll tell you how that shit'll get passed. We'll wake up on a Sunday morning, and it'll be on the Sunday morning news where they passed it on a Saturday in the middle of the night at midnight in Washington.
Now he did.
You will never see it coming.
In this unpackaging of ideas that he wanted to implement, he did throw out this interesting term which I'd never heard before. And it was called jungle primaries.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like...
Now, that's something I've never heard of.
So,
Inform me on what a jungle primary is.
It's kind of a...
This is pretty good.
A sort of a dumbed-down version of a regular voting primary.
Okay.
But, like if you have, 3, 4, 5 candidates in there, what they do is they boil it down to, hey, the top 2 are the only people that move forward.
Okay.
Versus
no matter what,
now,
no matter what you have, money, nothing, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't
Okay,
matter.
okay, I'm tracking.
It's like
You're out.
It's like the Running Man.
Yes.
Right, we decided you're out. You're out.
It was the craziest
I
thing.
love these references.
Because when I read it, I was like, wait, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Jungle primary. Never heard that term before.
Yeah, that's a fresh one.
Yeah,
on
it
me.
was.
So
crazy.
I have the ticket. What the ticket's going to be is it's going to be Danny DeVito. And it's going to be from Twins.
Yeah,
because
they're
you
gonna
remember
remake
at the end of that movie, they both had this corporation. It's kind of like the Rand Corporation, but smarter.
Right, right.
I'll buy that for $1.
I'm telling you, these Hollywood guys crack me up. They go out there and they make these billions and oodles of dollars, and then they get old and they can't work their way back into movies anymore.
But they got to be relevant. They got to still be in front of the
bingo.
camera
they
and be
have-
relevant.
Exactly. So what do? They get involved in politics. And they get involved in hot topics like policy making, environmentalism. What's a bigger issue than environmentalism? I mean, literally, environmentalism, this whole global warming thing, I don't give a shit who you are. I don't care where you come from. There's enough science out there to say that you're stupid if you believe in this
Right.
shit. If you follow the Farmer's Almanac, and if you read the Farmer's Almanac from beginning of time to now, this globe is continually changing. All the time.
And I'm sorry for being nasally here. I've got a cold today, so if anybody's wondering, I'm not up to snuff.
I'm not.
Yeah, Sam's on a roll.
But
You should see him. He's laid on the floor.
This show is brought to you by some brewery that came out of freaking Detroit.
Water. Go ahead.
So what we were saying is with all this environmentalism and where you were going with this, I look at the science of it like you're saying. I'll take Coleman, John Coleman from the Weather Channel. The guy founded the Weather Channel.
I love that guy.
I would say that he knows something about weather.
Sure.
I mean, the guy is the founder of the Weather Channel.
Right.
Look at the proof that he's come out with, where he said in the last 18 years we can't even prove that sea levels have risen or fallen. It's the same.
Yeah.
18 years of data. They talk about when you see on these commercials where the icebergs break off and the polar bears died. That stuff kills me. Polar bear populations are up. They're rising. The continent, the shelf that the Arctic Circle or the Antarctic Circle sits on has been expanding. Expanding.
Was it 18%?
Something along those lines. 20% is what
Yeah.
they used in the article.
Yeah.
But anywhere between 18 and 20%. So how are you going to sell me on this idea that climate change is real? Well, how you do it is you get an actor to stand up there and spew the lies,
right.
and then the soccer mom that's not going to do the research sits back and goes, "I'll buy that for $1," like you were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm willing to get behind that.
This is probably a good subject for another podcast. Is what does it take for these people to believe this stuff? Which is just absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people are just of a Me Too mentality. They're going to go. You ever notice everybody wore the latest and greatest shirt in school?
Yeah.
Like when iZod came out. Everybody had an iZod shirt. If you didn't have an iZod shirt, you weren't cool. Well, nowadays, it's pretty much a level field on playing on fashion.
Right.
Whatever you wear works. So what do? Your ideology now is what you're identified with.
Yeah, good point.
And I think a lot of people now are wanting to be in that group of don't fuck with me, I'm on your side.
Right.
On the surface. Whatever they do behind their closed doors is what they do behind their closed. So a lot of people, I think, just say shit just to get you to go away.
Right.
And they're going to go do what they're going to go do on their own. So I think that's part of it. And I actually think there's a lot of people that just don't have a clue.
They just buy into it.
They don't have a clue because they think it's a credible source.
And it's funny because I do have some Army buddies that have brought up this whole topic of like climate change. And my personal opinion on it is I don't give man that much credit with being able to come up with enough technology that would change the world globally.
Scientifically, from a mathematical perspective, that's how I'm going to look at this. It's impossible. Right. So stop lying to me.
But what this guy was basically saying is, unless you could come up with some sort of data that you could sell him on, basically you were assaulting his viewpoints, and he would unfriend you. Which I was like, okay, you know what? I serve with a bunch of fucking snowflakes.
Yeah.
Some guys, but there are a few out there that me personally, I don't buy the whole climate change thing.
It's a mathematical improbability.
So climate change is real because it changes every day.
Yeah,
But it's called weather.
Yeah.
It's called weather. It's not catastrophic. So this is what you got. So let's follow this train of thought for a minute. So you got a bunch of people that are pushing this, which are Hollywood elitists,
Right.
and they're academia, which academia drives me crazy because academia validates himself by themselves.
Self-importance.
Yeah, they're self-importance, and they get another person to validate.
Well, they qualify themselves. I am me because I say I'm me. That's how that works.
So they haven't sat down with God and talked to him about what the weather forecast is till the end of the world, so I don't want to hear it. But what I do find interesting about how this dynamic works is that Hollywood is supported by most academia.
Sure.
Okay, so they exchange money back and forth for exchange of a format to get their stories out.
One needs a spokesperson.
Right.
And you need a spokesperson that people freaking dial into. And as far as I'm concerned, weaponizing and monetizing are the same thing.
Sure.
So where a lot of this comes from is there was a big push for this in the 90s. Everybody popped up all these corporations for global change, global environment. It was a moneymaker. They were seen as
wind, solar, water, all that. Yeah.
All these alternative sources. Well, those are all failing now. That's why you're seeing such a hard push for this.
So why are they failing? Why are they failing though? This is
because they don't work.
They don't work, and they're very expensive.
Exactly. For the money that they allegedly save, for the energy that they give you, for the bang for your buck, you actually produce more pollutants when you look at solar, wind.
And I'm a big project management guy, and the part that stuns me is I know that project management principles go way back to at least adoption back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
So at some point, I know that somebody put some sort of an algorithm together to figure out whether something was going to be money making or not. And the fact that somebody didn't see how this was going to fail is beyond me.
Well, why? Because they've managed to sell it. I mean, they had a marketing plan in place when they went to it.
Right.
I promise you.
Which again, go back to what y'all were saying is, I need to put a face that somebody's going to believe.
They had an exit strategy on it as well. So you got to remember, if you're making an investment in the 90s and you know that it's failed miserably by 2000,
right?
Okay, you've gotten out of that business and you've already filed bankruptcy. You've already made all the money you're going to make. So who's the losers?
Right, the shareholders.
The shareholders and the consumer that was buying in on a promise. They've clearly exhibited they don't give a shit about how it affects anybody. So they're not really doing what's better for the good. They're doing what's better for
themselves.
So if you're a philanthropist, okay, I do apologize because there are some good ones out there.
Sure.
If you're taking care of children that have cancer, children that can't get operations, and people that need help in that way,
you're God's saint.
You're a wonderful person. But if you're a guy sitting on a board figuring out a way to fuck the consumer out of his hard-earned money on the hope and the promise of lower cost, we have been a victim of this lower cost shit for long enough.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go anywhere now where they sell you on the lower cost and it never delivers. And the only guy that makes the money is the guy that's walking away from this with the idea. Right. And then they resurface years later.
It's like a sick pyramid scheme almost. It really comes down to that. They're while you don't buy into it like a pyramid scheme, it ends up being the people at the top that get paid, I promise you.
Because they work it from the legislative side of it. So
it's a threefold. It is definitely a three-pronged attack.
So you talk about your money starting out as an idea, going through this little group, through legislation. Who do you think they get to? They get to your senators, your congressmen, all your representatives that are making decisions to force more tax and burden on you.
So to insert public, so if you get public backing, then go to policy making. Then
they're doing it opposite of that. They're going and getting the policy making
in some ways, but most of the time it's I've got the backing, therefore it justifies.
That's how you walk it. That's how you walk it through. Yeah. So basically, you're walking through. Say, for example, you're trying to build a solar energy plant in Nevada. Say your name is, I don't know, Harry something.
Reed.
Okay, yeah. So say somebody has a piece of land that they're looking at that you happen to be free ranging your cattle on. You saw the shit they did to those guys.
Yeah.
Here's what's really funny. They killed a dude.
Yeah, they did.
They killed a dude. And then they let everybody else out of jail with no charges.
Yep.
What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? They murdered that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, they had drone footage of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what
they're doing. And that's what I'm talking about. So that's how they walk things through.
Yeah.
Okay? So now what'll end up happening is the people that were interested, which I believe was a Chinese company.
It was.
Of all places, gets to make an investment now on the back of the taxpayers on the blood of the guy they shot in the ditch.
Michael Paulson.
Everybody
remembers Michael Paulson.
Yeah.
So going and tying this nice little bundle, we've talked about the message, we've talked about the messenger, and now we're showing you the mechanics. This is no different. The EPA works the same way. They work through the FDA the same way. The mechanics are identical. It's just different players. You're seeing now in the big one-eyed monster how they're going to do it in your face because you're too stupid to realize that's what they're doing.
Right. And they take your dollar to do it. That's what kills me.
All I got to say is what they're doing is going to fail miserably.
Right.
It will. I mean, Hollywood to me is so irrelevant because they've gotten so far off the skids that independent channels now are kicking their ass.
Right.
That's where this whole net neutrality thing comes in.
Well, that and YouTube. Look at YouTube doing what they're doing, trying to curtail everything. They're worried about it getting out from under their blanket of control. That's
Absolutely.
what they want to control what you see. Count on it. I promise you.
And and unfortunately, it's conservative viewpoints that they attack.
Well, because we're the ones that stand back and say, "Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. What you're telling me doesn't make sense." Yeah. So when you're that guy and you've got a YouTube channel, that's why they're shutting you down.
So they want you to question authority until
it's their authority. Yeah.
And I screwed up. It's Robert Paulson. God damn it.
That's okay.